We'll be starting a live book reading any site. You know you like my fancy sign? So that you know you're in the right place. Uh-oh. It didn't work. It did work for a second. Hopefully you can all see that. All right, what do you say? I think it's about time. I think it's about time we kick this thing off. Nothing says the beginning of live book reading like classical music bangers. Classical music bangers is the best way to start off live book reading, if you ask me. And no one did. So there we are. Welcome, everybody. We are reading live books together. If you've never been a part of a book club, this is your first book club. Welcome. We are going to be reading public domain live books together so that you don't have to go find a book to read. You can just be a part of a community of people who are reading a book together. You can sit, you can enjoy, you can chat, you can like, you can share. We are going to be reading for about 30 minutes, Mondays and Wednesdays at 9:30 Eastern. We're going to be reading about 30 minutes. And so I don't go to book prison. We're going to be reading public domain books that are 100 years old, but still have a good bite. Nothing like a good book from 100 years ago to show you that there's still some creativity that untapped, that books you've never even heard of, or maybe you have because you're that person, because you are him, because you are her. So that's what we're going to be doing. Monday and Wednesdays, we're going to be reading public domain books. If you've got a favorite public domain book that you think we should be reading, let me know. Let me know. We're going to be reading this thing together. You can put your book titles in the chat. You can let us know what kind of books you think we should be reading, and we're going to be hopping on that. All right. So tonight we are going to be reading. We are going to be reading a book that I've never heard of. We've only read it twice, so we're only an hour in, and it is fascinating. Fascinating. It will be my attempt, whether it's your first time or fifth time, to catch you up on the book, get you up to speed so that you know exactly where we are in this crazy story, and you can just kind of jump in and get in where you fit in. Okay. So today, this current book that we are reading is none other than The Confessions of Arsene Lupin. You may not even be able to see that, but it is the dun, 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 The Confessions of Arsene Lupin. Now, if you've heard of this book, and I am completely butchering these names because it's set in a French setting, let me know, because I don't want to be out here butchering the name, but I believe it is Arsene Lupin. I got to catch y'all up. Here's where we started. We start this book. It's set in, think like 1800s France. And this man who's a bit of a Sherlock-ish, but French. right? So he's Sherlock Holmes, but in cursive. So he is being interviewed by a friend of his, and he's staring out the window, not really paying his friend a whole lot of mind. His friend is like, "Please tell me more about you. I got this great story I want to write." And he starts looking out the window and he says, "Okay, I got a story for you. 7, 8, 9, write it down. 12, 3, 5." And he starts spitting off random numbers. And the guy's like, what are we doing? What is this? What is this? And he was like, "Just write it down, write it down, write it down." And he starts writing it down. He was like, "What do you have me doing?" He said, "Now put a letter to each one of those numbers." And he was like, "This is stupid." "Do it." Fine. He does it. And it reads him this cryptic message that says, "Don't trust anyone. Basically, watch out for enemies and be on the lookout." And then that's all it says. And Arsene jumps up. "Follow me. We got to get out of here." He grabs his friend by the arm and they go running down to a certain home. He goes to this home, he bursts in, and this is when they had like maids at the door. The maid is like, "What's going on?" He was like, "I'm here to see who lives upstairs." "So he's really sick, you can't go." "Move aside." So he like pushes her aside. He goes in, he picks the lock, opens the door. The guy's on the floor dead. "I'm sorry, the book just started. How's there a dead guy?" So he's sitting there, the guy's dead. He's been stabbed in his neck and in his heart with this tiny little hole. She said, "Oh my God, the doctor must have did it. His doctor was the only one in here, and he told no one else to come see him." Next thing you know, Arsene looks out the window at an open window across the street. He runs downstairs, goes to that home and says, "Who lives here?" "So and so lives here." "Hardgrove." "Well, where is he?" "He ran out to go get the police." And he was like, "Oh my God, I know what's going on." All of that is happening while this undercurrent of plot is that there is a baron, and he's simply known as the Baron. And the Baron is missing his wife, the Baroness, and the Baroness has escaped, and she's took money and jewel tooken. She has the money and the jewels, and she left town, and she's gallivanting around Europe, spending money and jewels, and just living the life. And he put out a reward, something like 300,000 francs, for someone to come find his wife. Well, the Baron is also the employer of the man who was with the little hole in his neck. So Arsene goes to the man's house, knocks on his door, and he says, "Hey, I need to let you know something. I know who killed your employee." He was like, "Oh my God, come in. You must know. I'll save you the 30 minutes." But basically, Arsene accuses the Baron. He says, "It was you. You did it. You're the doctor. You had a little pin. You stabbed him in the neck. He bled out and bled internally. And then you came over here thinking no one would know. I also know that you killed your wife." What? How you gonna walk in a man's house and accuse him of killing his own wife? How you do that with a straight? I need more wine for this. How you do that with a straight face? But he did it. The man says, "How dare you?" He said, "Let me break it down for you. Let me break it down for you." So he breaks it down very Sherlock style, right? So you knew that you were trying to get rid of your wife because you saw this other little hot thing that you wanted to get with, right? So just like you killed, well, first you killed your wife, okay? Then you dressed your mistress up as your wife and you sent her out to go live lavishly and spend all this money. So then you put out a reward so no one would suspect you, because who suspects a man of killing his wife that puts out $300,000 reward? Hello, you know, what's it, alibi. I was going to say alimony. That comes in a different time. So, but then your employee who takes care of your money, he found out and he was going to out you. So you had to take care of him too. And I know you did it. And the Baron is like, "How could you?" Also, Cock pulls out the pistol, and now there's a gunfight in the lobby of this man's house with the Baron. And there's like, ugh, and then like a punch, and then like a pow pow, and then he ducked out the way. I assume in the 1800s, bullets were much slower. And he like, he like ducked out the way, and there's a whole like shootout happening right here in the one. Not really a shootout because the Baron was the only one with a gun, and like pow 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 pow. So he shoot him, and he's John Wick, and he's moving all out the way. He get a left and a right, and an uppercut and a jab, and he has the Baron on the floor. And he tells the Baron, "You would have got away with it. If you'd have just cut me in on it, you would have got away with it." I'm not kidding. That's what he tells the man. He tells him, "If you would have just cut me in on it, you could have got away with it." So now I'm not even sure. Like, is Arsene a good guy? Is he a bad guy? He kind of just like solved this case, but he also was like, yo, I'm dirty too. And that's where we left off. And I think that was like page 32. So that's a lot. That's a lot. That's a lot that's gone down. And so that's where we are in this whole mystery. Ooh, and while I was talking to y'all, my hand hit the iPad, and I don't move my I don't move the page. All right, found it. Okay, so now we're all caught up. The Confessions of Arsene Lupin is not to be slept on. The first 32 pages, there's murder, there's possible murder, there's implications of murder, there's accusations of murder, and then there's attempted murder. I know this book was going to be like this. I thought it was, I know it was going to be like, it's 100 years old. How am I supposed to know? So if you're watching, share this, hit the screen, tap it, comment. We about to go in. We about to live read the Confessions of Arsene Lupin. Okay. So I believe we're all caught up. Here we are. We're in the living room where there's a tussle and a hustle and a pop pop and a boom boom and a shank shank. And that shank is where we stopped. You see, Lumpkin feels something prick him and he realizes, you dirty dog. You done stabbed me with the same little shank that you stabbed. Oh boy. Oh, did you even wipe it off? Oh, did you even wipe it off? Here's where we're at. You villain, he yelled. This is Lupin talking. You'll catch up. I try to do voices, but sometimes I get confused. That's your Lavenrow trick, isn't it? Lavenrow's the man he killed. The tie pin. Stiffening his muscles with a desperate effort, he overpowered the Baron and clutched him by the throat. And he was victorious at last. You ass, he cried. Had you not shown your cards, I might have thrown up the whole game. You have a look of an honest man about you. What about you? What about your biceps, my lord? For one might thought that it would be all over, but come now, you pull out a pin. And now all I can do is look at you as I hold your throat so tightly. As you grasp your last breath, my lord. This but be a wee risk around your neck. Why, you and I, we're almost alike. We could have been brothers. It's touching, you and I. At heart, I was actually very fond of you. And now I feel like I owe you 1,000 apologies. Half raising himself with all of his strength, he caught another terrible blow to the stomach. Boom! The Baron gurgled and laid stunned and unconscious. That comes from having no sense of logic, my friend, Lupin said. I offered half your money, and now I give you none at all. Provided I know where to find any of it. For the main thing is, where has this beggar hidden his dust? Is his cash in the safe? By George, this will be tough. Luckily, I have all night. He began to fill through the Baron's pockets, and he came up with a bunch of keys. First, he made a turnaround. Was it behind the curtain? Behind the papers? Maybe they were full of jewels in the safe in the corner. But at that moment, he stopped short. He heard a noise from somewhere. The servants? Maybe. But the attics were on top of the floor. So he listened, but the noise came from below. Suddenly he understood. The detectives who had heard the 2 gunshots were now banging on the door, as was their duty. Without waiting for daybreak, the electric bell rang, and Lupin recognized, as in the hall, by Juniper. He said, "Pretty work! Here come the jokers!" Just as they were about to gather for the fruits of our laborious efforts. "Tut tut, Lupin, keep your cool. What's expected of you? To open the safe? You don't even know the secrets, and you can't find them in 30 seconds. This was a mere trifle to lose your head about. Come, what are we going to do? We have to discover the secret." How many letters are in the word "for"? He went on thinking. And while he was talking and listening to the noise outside, he double locked the door from the outer room, and then he came back into the inner room with the safe. It's 4 ciphers, 4 letters. Who can lend me a hand? Who can give me a tiny hint? Who? Why, Lavenroe, of course. That good Lavenroe. Seeing that he took the trouble to indulge in a telegraph with the risk of his life. Lord, what a fool I am. Of course, of course. That's it. By Jove, this is so exciting. Lupin must count 10 and suppress, be distracted from your beating heart. I believe this is going to work. He counted to 10, and then, quite calm, he knelt down in front of the safe. He turned the knob 4 times with careful attention. He then examined the bunch of keys, and he selected one of them, and then another, and then another, and he attempted in vain to insert them into the lock. There are millions. Baron, I forgive you. I thought you were a fool. And then he gave a single bound backwards, high coughing with fright. His legs staggered beneath him. The keys jingled together in his fevered hand with a sinister sound. And 30 seconds, despite that ding at the door being raised by the electric bell, it kept ringing throughout the night. He stood there, wide-eyed, gazed with the most horrible, most admirable sight of a woman's body, half-dressed, bent into the safe, crammed like an overlarge parcel. Fair hair hanging down, blood, clots of blood, vivid flesh, blue in places, decomposing and flaccid. "The Baroness?" he gasped. "The Baroness! Oh my God, what a monster!" He roused himself from his stupor suddenly to spit in the murderer's face and pound him with his heel. "Take that, you wretch, you villain!" And with it the scaffold of a bran basket. Meanwhile, the shouts came from the upper floor. In reply to the detective's ringing, Lupin heard footsteps scurrying down the stairs. Time to think of a retreat and time to think of one now. In the reality, it did not trouble him greatly. During his conversation with the Baron, the enemy's extraordinary coolness had given him a feeling that there must be a private outlet. Besides, could the Baron have begun the fight if he were not surely trying to escape the police? Lupin went into the next room. It looked out over the garden. And at that moment, the detectives entered the house. He flung his legs over the balcony and himself down the rain pipe. He walked around the building to the opposite side of the walls that lined with shrubs. He slipped in between the shrubs and the wall and at once found the little door, which he easily opened with the keys that were in his bunch. All that remained of him was to walk across the yard, pass through 2 empty rooms of a lodge, and for the moment he found himself in the Rue des Flambeaux Saint-Honore. Of course, he had reckoned the police had not provided such a secret outlet. He may not have been able to escape. "Well, what did you think of Baron Raspin?" cried Lupin. after giving all of the details of his tragic night to me. What a dirty scoundrel! It teaches you how to distrust appearances, it does. I swear to you, that fellow looked the most thoroughly honest man. But what about the millions? I asked. The princess jewels that his wife is spending, or whoever is spending, around Europe. Well, they were in the safe, weren't they? I remember seeing something in there. Well, maybe they're still in there. Impossible. But they are, upon my word. And I tell you that I was afraid of the detectives or the plead of a sudden attack of delicacy. But the truth is simpler, for the smell was too awful. What? My dear fellow, the smell that came from that safe, from that coffin. No, I couldn't do it. My head swam. Another second and I would have been ill. Isn't it silly? Look, this is all I got from my entire expedition. One tie pin. The bedrock value of this pearl may be 30,000 francs. But all the same, I feel jolly well annoyed. What a sell. One more question, I said. A word about that open safe. Well, tell me your question. It was contained in the revelation of the telegraph that poor Leavenworth typed, didn't it? What? Just think, my dear chap. The mistakes in spelling? Mistakes in spelling? I said. Why, of course, they were deliberate. Surely you don't imagine that the agent, the private secretary of the Baron, whose company promoter, mind you, was a racing man, didn't know English better enough to spell necessary with an E, attack with a T, only one of them, and two N's in prudence and an A? The thing struck me at once. I put the four letters together that got Etna, the name of the famous horse. And that one word was enough? I asked Lupin. Of course. It was enough to start to put me on to the scent of the Respin case, with all of the papers that were full, and next to make a guess of what the key word of the safe might have been. But of course, I had it right there in my hand, or rather in LaRue's hand. He knew the gruesome contents of that safe. On the other, he was also denouncing the Baron. And it was the same way that led to the supposed working out of the problems. The ciphergrams, the illustrated papers, they were all contrived in a way of exacting the telegram from one window to the next. It's all quite simple, he said. It's very simple. And the incident shows that the discovery of crimes, there is something more valuable than the examination of the facts. It's the observations, the deductions, the inferences, and all the stuff of nonsense. What I mean is, as I said before, intuition. Intuition and intelligence. And Arsene Lupin, without boasting, is deficient in neither one nor the other. The end. My God. All right, so here's something I didn't know. The Confessions of Arsene Lupin isn't one long continuous story, because here we are, find ourselves right here on page 39. Why am I still talking in the accent? Find ourselves, I was like on page 39. Find ourselves on page 39. And that particular story seems to have wrapped up. It's now starting a new story called The Wedding Ring. And I mean, I could just continue reading as though it were one story, but that feels pretty finite. That feels like that story ended. So, here's what we're going to do. We're going to recap that real quick because I feel like a lot happened and I have to process my emotions with someone. And since you are here, we have to talk about this together. What the what? What? She was in the safe? She was in the safe. Yo, the body was in the safe. Yo, I had to read it to you and be cool and be chill. But inside, I was like, don't tell me this chick is in the safe. Don't tell me this chick is like bent up in the safe. This man was twisted. This man was twisted. This chick was in the safe. Well, thank you. I'm sure I love your voice too. This man was in the safe. This woman was in the safe. He killed his wife and put her in a safe. And possibly behind her were the jewels that he said she stole. But Lupin didn't want to try to go get them because she would have had to move the body to go. Like how do you like reach behind? Man, what a story! That all happened in like 35 pages. Okay, so um Arsene Lupin is the man. See, he's like Sherlock, but he got hands. I ain't never seen Sherlock have to like come to blows, right? Like Sherlock fights with his mind, right? Arsene's like, I got Stone and Mountain. Like, what we doing? You know what I mean? I got Bono and Sandra Day O'Connor. Like, what? He has hands, and he was choking him. And then he gave him like the old, and then he passed out. Bro put his wife in the safe. So anyway, what a crazy first story. Crazy first story. Now that I know the Confessions of Arsene Lupin is basically short stories, I may read faster. I may just try to do one in one night, but that was still a lot. This first particular story was called 200,000 francs reward. And now I get it because that's what he was offering for the Baroness, but she was never really gone. Man, that was crazy. That was crazy. I did not see that coming, and now I'm super excited for the next story. I don't know what it's going to be like, but here's what I'm going to do. For all of you that are here, for all of you that stuck around so that we could read this story together, I'm going to probably do one paragraph of the next one so we can kind of get an idea of what we're getting into. Okay. I'm going to give it, I'm going to give it 60 seconds. Here we go. Oh my gosh, these French names be killing me. Um, I don't know. Yvonne Ordini. Yvonne de Ordini kissed her son and told him to be good. You know, your grandmother de Ordini was not very fond of children. Not that she sent for you to come to see her, but you must show her some sensibility, especially with you being a little boy. And turning to the governess, don't forget, Fraudeline, to bring him home immediately after dinner. Is Monsieur still in the house? Yes, madame. Monsieur le Comte is in his study. As soon as she was alone, Yvonne Diordini walked to the window to catch a glimpse of her son as he left the house. He was down the street in a moment, raised his head and blew her a kiss, as was his custom every day. Then the governess took him by the hand, and Yvonne remarked to her surprise a movement of unusual violence. Yvonne leaned forward out the window when the boy reached the corner of the boulevard, and she suddenly saw a man step out of a motor car and go up and grab him. The man who she recognized as Bernard, her husband's confidant and servant, took the child by the arm and made both of his and the governess's hands tied together, threw them in the car, and ordered the chauffeur to drive off. The whole incident did not take 10 seconds. She hurried down the boulevard and the back door was locked. Suddenly, she saw the image of her husband appeared before her gloomy face without a smile, those pitiless eyes in which for years she had felt so much hatred and malice. It's he, isn't it? She said to herself. He has taken the child. He is horrible. She beat her fist against the wall. With her feet, she flew into the mantelpiece and pressed the bell so fiercely. The shrill sound throughout the house rang from top to bottom. The servants would be sure to come. Perhaps a crowd would gather in the streets, impelled by the sort of despairing hope. As she kept her finger on the button, she turned the key to the lock. The door flung open, and the count appeared on the threshold of the boudoir outside. And the expression of his face was so terrible that Yvonne began to tremble. He entered the room. Oh, Bouvier. Huh. He entered the room. 5 or 6 steps separated him from her. And with supreme effort, she tried to stir, but in a moment it was impossible. She attempted to speak, but she could only flutter her lips with incoherent sounds. She felt lost. The thought of death unhinged her. Her knees gave way beneath her, and she sank into a huddled heap with a moan. The Count rushed by her and seized her by the throat. Hold your tongue. Do not call out. That is what's best for you. And that's it for that. This Arsene Lumpkin fellow. He be getting into some stuff. Man, that one's called The Wedding Ring. So we get to see what that's all about. Well, thank you guys for coming to another episode of live book readings from the public domain. This has been the Confessions of Arsene Lupin. We finished 200,000 francs and we just began The Wedding Ring. And this book is intense. The first story was murder, people getting shanked, stuffed in safes. I'm still messed up by that. And now we've got a woman, her son, and the house mistress have been kidnapped. And the man who did it walked up like, yeah, and okay, this isn't a ransom. This is yeah, I did it. So I guess we'll see where that goes. I will see you all Wednesday at 9:30 Eastern Time, where we continue the Confessions of Arsene Lumpkin and the Wedding Ring. Thanks for being a part of tonight. We will see you in approximately 2 days. Love, peace, and happiness to everyone. Goodbye. Bye. Oh, and one more thing.